Welcome to another episode of One-on-One with Mitch Lafon. Joining me this week from Nelson, Matthew Nelson. Their new album is Peace Out. And to talk about all this is Bill Leverty of Firehouse. Good day, Bill.
Hey, Mitch, how's it going, man?
Good, good. Let me just remind you that this is brought to you by the Heavy Montreal Festival, taking place August 7th, 8th, and 9th at Parc Jean Drapeau in beautiful downtown Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Faith No More, Slipknot, Korn, and since we're talking about Nelson on this episode, let's look at Extreme, Dokken, Lita Ford, and Warrant, also at Heavy Montreal. Now, Bill, you were telling me before we got on air about a story about Nelson at a radio station, which I found quite interesting. Tell me a little bit about that. You were Firehouse without touring, good acoustics, and you showed up and you heard Nelson playing.
Yeah, well, the way it works is that when you're out, promoting a new album, the radio stations invite you to come by and play a song acoustically, and we called it the promo shuffle.
Right.
And we were on our way to a station in the Midwest, I'm guessing maybe Minneapolis, and our record company guys said, "Oh yeah, the Nelson guys are there now promoting their new album." I said, "Well, cool, let's turn on the radio," and we turned it on, and they were singing their dad's song, Garden Party, acoustically in the studio, and it sounded like a perfectly produced recording, and they were just live, vocals perfect, guitar playing perfect. I mean, these guys are extraordinarily talented, and the other thing, we've done several shows with them, but they're practicing all the time too, so I think the talent that they have is kind of punctuated by their work ethic of hard work and practicing all the time. So that's what you get with those guys. I mean, and their band is just extraordinary.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of people missed out on Nelson in the late 80s and 90s is they had this image that was way over the top. I mean, red leather chaps and this long hair down to the floor. And people never didn't give him a chance to check out the music and check out the talent. They just went, "Oh, look at those guys," and they sort of walked away. But if you actually sit down and listen to an album like Peace Out, for example, you'll realize these guys are just really, really good.
Well, you said nobody gave them a chance. I will tell you that 10 million people bought their albums and gave them a chance and were blown away.
Right.
Because they're great, and they might have been shunned a little bit in the metal community, but I think everybody that gave them a chance and listened to their music, it's all really well written, well recorded, well played, integrity material, and the guys are really cool too. So I think it's better to come to a party late than to not come to a party ever.
Right.
And it's good that people are getting reacquainted with their music. It's real good.
Yeah. Now, as you'll hear Matthew describe, Peace Out is going to be their last rock record. They want to get into other things musically down the line, and they also do the Ricky Nelson Remembered show, a tribute to their father. So, have you had a chance to see the Ricky Nelson Remembered show?
I haven't, but we've done several shows with Nelson,
right? And
they do a couple of songs where they come out acoustically, and it's just remarkable how good these guys are, and they come from a long lineage of music and show business, so they're total pros. They're awesome. They really are.
The only thing I would bemoan about Nelson living up in Montreal or in Canada is they just don't get up here enough, or even at all. I mean, you just don't see Nelson in Canada, and that's too bad. I really wish they would somehow figure out a way to play a festival or play a show or get to a club, and just whether it's with the Ricky Nelson Remembered or as a Nelson show, I would just love to see them up here.
Well, I think with your help, I think that might change.
Hey, it's doable. Anyway, let's listen to Matthew Nelson talk about his brother, the new album Peace Out, touring, what they're going to do in the future, and all that good stuff. Here's Matthew. So let's talk about the new album on Frontier's record, Peace Out. It's been 25 years since the first record. what were you trying to say or do with this album?
I think that question really is more about something that Gunnar was trying to say. I mean, I actually really didn't even know that the album was even in process, as you will, until it was about 3/4 of the way done. You know, we each have our things going on, our own recording studios, that type of thing. And our discussion actually was that the last album was going to be that we did, which was Lightning Strikes Twice, was going to probably be the last one we did for a while. And then Gunnar called me up and said, I think I've got this thing pretty much surrounded. Why don't you come and, you know, do your parts and maybe write 1 or 2 tunes? And when I showed up, it was pretty much Gunnar's vision. And so I always tell people that Gunnar was largely responsible for this particular album. And then we kind of decided that we were going to make a turn in our career and do something different. So this would be a good way of kind of, for the fans that have stuck with us for years and years, it's been 25 years, that it's the last in this kind of milieu, if you will.
Right.
I mean, we'll still play shows, but the last we're going to do as far as that Nelson hard rock, arena rock sound.
Why the decision to make it the last one of the hard rock genre? I mean, you do it so well. You've had over 20 years of career, and why just say, hey, all right, we're going to stop? Why not just take a 5-year break or a 10-year break? Why sort of put a cherry on top?
Well, I think I can only go by what I've seen in the business, pardon me, with my contemporaries and even with my dad. You know, at a certain point, you have to let everybody know you're doing something different. Otherwise, you kind of have 1 foot in, 1 foot out. It just kind of, it doesn't do justice to anything that you're doing if you're not committed to it. That's just my opinion on that. Gunnar and I really kind of want to do something that's a little bit different sounding. And I think in order to do that adequately, we really have to make a decision. But also, if you're just looking at it from a practical reality, the truth is the world right now is about touring bands, live shows. And fortunately for Gunnar and myself, we've always done that. We've always played live and toured and that type of thing. But there is no real recording industry anymore. Songs have kind of become more of a commercial for the live show. And Gunnar and I are songwriters. So we look at the fact that if we're going to go out, and let's just say we're opening for somebody, we'll get half an hour, 45 minutes, maybe a 60-minute show. If we're headlining, we've got 90 minutes. We already have 13 albums.
Right.
So the thing is, we just cannot get to all the stuff that people like. And that becomes a problem, honestly, when we're putting a set list together. And, you know, we have 4 songs off our first album that all charted very highly. So people expect to hear those. So that there's 20 minutes done. If you're doing a half-hour set, well, you got 2 songs and it's thank you, good night. So I think that's part of it. It's not a matter of, you know, not being able to express ourselves. We've kind of, at least for this type of thing, I think we've kind of, we had a lot to say, and I think if we have more to say that's new, it'll probably be in a different milieu.
Yeah, now you're supposed to, from what I've read, you're going to be moving on doing sort of more of a sort of singer-songwriter kind of thing with just the guitars and just the voices, not so much the whole hard rock presentation. Is that about right?
I think that's accurate. You know, the truth is Nelson really started with 2 brothers and 2 acoustic guitars, and we built everything around it. It's almost like we always thought that we were Heart, but we were a male version of Heart. Right. You know, and our background, our musical influences were more of that California folk pop thing, you know, that led to bands like the Hollies and the Byrds and, you know, the Beach Boys and our dad's Stone Canyon Band, things like that. And so when we debuted, we wanted to be ourselves and really kind of tap into that type of our musical DNA, you know, that type of a sound. And that's what I think made us stand out. Right. But it really always was the 2 brothers and the 2 guitars. That's how we got our first record deal. That's how we, you know, opened up for Styx and Frampton, was just that way. Because I think that's, you know, it takes balls to do that. You know, if you get out in front of 16,000 people with two voices and 2 guitars and you can rock the crowd, well, I think you got something there. And I think this is kind of more or less embracing our strengths and discarding our weaknesses. And the truth of it, too, is as we get older, we realize that, you know, as far as when Gunnar and I work together, we can count on each other. And realistically, the people that play with us, we've played with the best players you can ever imagine, and I love working with other people. But, you know, when we started, we really wanted it to be more of a band presentation with 2 frontmen, and it just kind of, people just really didn't care about the band. You know, they really kind of cared about the 2 of us. So I think what we're doing really is kind of embracing a brighter future rather than holding on to a distant past.
Yeah, that's well put. And I do want to talk about the band and Bobby Rock and all of. After the Rain came out in 1990, was a double platinum success. And then you got into record company politics, Kolodner and Sony and all that wonderful stuff, or Geffen, I should say. The next album didn't come out till 1995, but you had recorded Imaginator before Because They Can. Tell me a little bit about all of that situation, how frustrating it was. Why was Imaginator sort of a darker album than After the Rain? Why did you think that was the right choice to make? And how much of record company pushback did you have to deal with?
Wow, I mean, there's a book in there.
I know.
Yeah. Well, Gunnar and I, we always say that we had the world's longest overnight success. You know, we started playing when we were really young, started playing clubs when we were super young, 12 years old, whatever. But also we were more of about songs, and we traveled the world really learning how to write. And so the first album, yeah, we worked a long time on it, and you know, a lot of songs got discarded, and it was an album of focus and something that sounded very unique and different. We had a producer that had no track record. Our compromise was a producer that we liked to write songs with, but an engineer, recording engineer, their choice. So it wound up being David Thoner, who did John Wade's Missing You and a bunch of other stuff. And so that worked out fine. The actual single was completely redone by a guy that we had worked on Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure with. We did the soundtrack title song for that called Two Heads Are Better Than One under an assumed name because Kolodner, really wanted our first thing to be ours. And anyways, I just remember, I can't really tell people, what it's like, the experience of going from obscurity to relative instant superstardom. But that's kind of what happened to Gunnar and I. I always say, I lived in the Valley and went to the Sherman Oaks Galleria to buy underwear and socks one day, 2 weeks later after we'd been on MTV as guest hosts and our record was released and hitting the charts. I went back to the same place for a record signing and the police closed it down because all three levels of the mall were inundated with teenage girls. Right. It was crazy. I mean, and it's like, it was that kind of contrast, and then it was, we had the tiger by the tail for a couple of years. We had, a year and a half of true dominance in what was happening, which was MTV and touring. And, Geffen didn't see us actually as a touring band, so they never gave us tour support. We invested our own T-shirt money that we got and merch money into our tour to keep it going. And it was that type of a thing for us. We always had to kind of invest in ourselves, believe in ourselves, and always thought that, okay, when it comes time to album 2, and it's not so bad when you're headlining your first tour, because frankly, nobody would take us out. I mean, we did an opening spot for Cinderella once, and that was like 3 months. But, truthfully, we had more time, more fun being able to do our own show to our own fans. And, we always kind of felt guilty until proven innocent. And what happened was we went on the road for about a year, and Geffen, or our little label called DGC, David Geffen Company, was an offshoot of Geffen, signed Nirvana. And they were basically licensing, albums from Sub Pop up north because they were cheap. Right. And Nirvana, they broke Nirvana, and it basically was a sociology experiment, really. It was about, it wasn't just our record company. It was what happened. MTV decided to not play bands that they considered were in our genre anymore. It was either going to be hip hop or grunge, and that was it. So overnight, if you see, it was the biggest paradigm shift actually since disco. And so Gunnar and I came back, and on our label, we were like the favored sons because we kind of broke DGC, were their first success. Right. To, literally, the president of the label saying, what, you guys are still here? And meanwhile, we're making our second album. We did it in exile. They kind of sent us to a residential studio in Reno, and we started making Imaginator. And I actually really enjoyed Imaginator because I had a lot to say. I had really been, if you can imagine, put on the cover of a lot of teen magazines and exploited in a way that wasn't really my choice, but it just was what it was. I was 22 years old. It was a long time ago. And, I kind of saw what the media did to people. And, from a fan's point of view, I mean, it's a brainwashing effect. And from people that are along for the ride, I have a whole different perspective when I watch the movie for Pink Floyd's The Wall now. And so I guess that was my tapping into kind of a darker side. And I think it's also because, frankly, Gunnar and I come from a legacy of, America's television family. Yep. It's ironic. And that's what it was about. Imaginator was about television. And let's just say that it's not like if I would have come up with After the Rain Part 2 at that period of time at DGC Records and put it on the table, they still would have thrown it in trash. They still would have, because that's not what they were doing. Literally, they told us our label agenda has changed.
Right.
So we couldn't win. Now, the problem was we also had sold so many records, they didn't want to let us off the label. So, and basically, I've stayed in touch with the people that were largely responsible for breaking the record at radio, and the record promotion people, they're still doing it, and we're still friends. But they said, we weren't the only ones that got that talk. We weren't the only ones that were put on ice. They literally shifted their entire label agenda away from hard rock projects and started. It was about alternative and grunge. That's what it was, and that's not what we did. So when we finally put out our what was to become our second album, Because They Can, it was before the Eagles reformed for Hell Freezes Over, and half the Eagles are on our album because we tapped into that California musical DNA I was talking about, with kind of a country rock thing, and frankly, they didn't know what the hell to do with it. Right. So I listen to that second album now, and I quite like both of them. I like Imaginary because it's as dark as I've ever gotten, and I like Because They Can, because I honestly think that it stretched us out musically in ways that people didn't expect. Unfortunately, people really didn't get a chance to hear it. And it really had nothing to do with us. It was just, I literally had the head of the label walk up to me and say, just want you to know, I know your album's coming out next week, but we're going to do everything we possibly can to kill the album. You're not going to get any support. We're not going to go to radio with it. It's just going to go away. And I remember saying to this guy, I thought he was joking. And I said, we have families and stuff, right? You're joking, right? He said, no, I don't want you to be surprised. And I said, well, maybe this is information I could have had 4 years ago before I made 2 albums for you that you didn't release. And that was the politics that we're talking about. They were under orders to not say anything until it was literally the week of our release. And I vowed to never be in that position again. And that's when I formed Stone Canyon Records with my brother. And we just decided if we were going to sell 2 records to people that really cared, at least we're not going to be slaves to somebody that really doesn't. And I think, I'm a little proud of the fact that we're amongst the first artists to actually start their own independent label. Joan Jett did the same thing when, she was out of the Runaways, and nobody would give her a shot. So I think pretty much sure that Blackheart Records was one of the first of those, that really worked. And Gunnar and I have, we've released a lot of records we're proud of, and this is one of them. But, this is not actually a Frontiers release. This is a Stone Canyon release that we licensed to Frontiers.
How frustrating. Well, let me put it this way. When that happened from 91 to 95, you're going through all of this. At any time, did you just say, listen, I'm just going to go to the mall and get a job and forget all of this stuff? What kept you focused and kept you making music and kept you in the business? Why not just walk away and say, oh, you know what, I'll just go sell cars at Ford. Leave me alone. I don't want to deal with this.
Well, I think that would have entered my mind if I were making music for the wrong reasons.
Okay.
The truth is I didn't start doing this because I wanted to be famous. It's in my blood. It's something I've always done. It's kind of like, even now, I spend a lot of my time writing songs that I know nobody's ever going to hear, but it's because I know that I've got something to say and something to do. And I'll tell you what, I had a lot of people that I knew that were contemporaries from 25 years ago that did exactly that. That got a job for a cable company or started painting houses or, and the truth is too, there are a lot of easier ways to make a living. I'm here to tell you. I tell people that I don't get paid when I go do a show now for playing music. It's part of it, but I think what it's really about is, I miss the first birthdays and the soccer games, and I take a chance of dying on an airplane every time I leave for my work. So that's my reality. That's something that's close to it happened to my dad. It's an occupational hazard, and it's real. So I think it's really comes down to, why did I not quit?
Yeah.
I'm not saying you don't do some self-exploration and things like that, but I don't really feel like I'm done yet.
Okay.
And it's not because I miss the glory days. I don't really feel like I've said all I have to say yet. And the truth is, I'll play the same show for 5 people as I will for 50,000, and I've done both.
Right. And
it's
I wasn't
just a matter of a
sorry,
yeah,
I wasn't
it's
referring
a matter of a work ethic.
Right. And I wasn't referring to quitting now. I was just talking about that, 19
back then.
Yeah, I'm talking 1990 because you shouldn't quit now, obviously, especially with the new album, which really sounds fantastic, by the way. And I mean that honestly. I listened to it and I was very, very entranced in it. It just sucks you in. It's a great album. No, but in 1990, here you are. You have this sort of this big single, MTV support. You're the face on all kinds of magazines, and then for 5 years after that, you make a record. They tell you, pfft, and then you make another one. And they say, we're not going to like. To me, I would have just been so frustrated that I might have just walked away and said, you know what, this is just not worth my time. And that's what I was referring to. Why not in that 4-year period?
I think it's a really good question, but I think what it comes down to is it's just not in my nature to let assholes get to me. Sorry.
Yeah, no, but you're right about that.
You have to bleep that. I mean, I just really wanted to. Good, because I just really wanted to get to a place where I just realized that, the people that there were, I had to really be honest with myself and say a lot of people that were along for the ride of success, you learn the hard way that they really aren't your friends. Mm-hmm. They say they are. But the minute that stuff stops, they're gone. And I saw that with my dad, too. I mean, I knew this stuff. So it really didn't surprise me. But the people that were there for the right reasons, I still have them in my life. So it's like having a quick relationship or something like that, you've got stars in your eyes. And, eventually you see the reality of things. And for myself, what I wanted to do, I mean, the first thing that I did was I formed Stone Canyon Records and released Imaginator. And they literally said, we don't believe in that piece of crap. You can take it with you. And it's one of my favorite things just because it was done. It was finished. The only regret I have with that, and I plan on fixing it, is I had Henry Rollins come in and do some spoken word on it. I had met him, Henry Rollins from Black Flag, and
oh yeah, I know Henry very well.
Yeah, I was a big fan of his, and I still am. I love his writing and stuff like that. I went to go see his spoken word thing, and he actually brought up my band in a derogatory way. And I went backstage to meet him, and he looked at me like I had 3 heads. Said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, Ira Malik, the sound guy, he used to work with my pop, and I'm a fan of yours, but I just thought that you have an interesting perspective on us." He said, "Oh yeah, why? Why don't you clear it up?" I said, "Well, I think that we suffer from a little bit of the same problem." He said, "How do you figure that?" And I said, "Well, people see us on an 8x10 glossy or on the cover of Tiger Beat and say, that's what that is, just like you did. But the fact is I've never actually done an interview for Tiger Beat or anything like that. I've been sold out, and they sold my pictures, and it was a lot of money for somebody. It wasn't for me, but it doesn't really matter because that's what it is. You basically know what you see." And I said, people see you coming, and you look like a guy that just got out of a Supermax. You got tattoos all over the place, and you're terrifying. Yep. The fact is, you're a really intelligent man. I mean, you're deep. You're as deep as they go. You go to the other side. And a lot of times people won't even let you get a shot at it. He said, "Well, I never really thought about it that way. What do you suggest?" And I said, "Why don't we work together?" And so I called him up, and he actually did some spoken word on it. And I have the tapes, and it's great. And, Imagine it was a concept record, and he was a character at the end that actually closed the album. And when I put it out again, I did see Hank a few years ago at a recording studio memorial thing that I did. And he was proud of it, and he asked me about it. And I told him I want to put it out. He said, "Well, why not?" And so that's on my agenda. But I think that for me, it was really nice because at least artistically speaking, I went to a place that I was really proud of.
Let me ask you, because you are referring to image here, how much of a help and how much of a hindrance was your early image? I mean, you had the long hair and the red boots or chaps. It was sort of over the top, but not really for that era. But as you got into,
right.
And you talk about Tiger Beat, you talk about some of the teenage magazines. So the image obviously helped, but on the same time, there were people like Henry Rollins looking at that going, "I ain't listening to that garbage." And it was just based on image. It had nothing to do with music. So
sure.
So how much of it?
Well, I mean, any bad review we ever got was only about image.
Exactly.
We actually never got anybody criticizing our music, which I thought was really fun. Right. I mean, I wasn't completely opposed to controversy, I'll be honest with you. Gunnar and I spent some years before we released our first album in Europe, and Australia and traveled all over the world. And, the internet's made, this is pre-internet.
Right.
So the internet's it's a lot smaller place now. But the fact was, in Europe, let's just say, take England, image is as important or more important than the music. And when you're writing over there for a while, I mean, we were writing with Russ Ballard from Argent for a while, and I remember going to some parties with him, and I had, some stylists and some pop stars come up and say, "What the hell are you guys going for?" I said, "What do you mean?" It's like, "Your look. What is this?" And I remember it really kind of impressed me because it's like, well, this is a big planet, and music can get everywhere. It's not just America. And so Gunnar and I talked about it, and we wanted our music in its own way to be revolutionary. And I know it doesn't sound like it is, but at the time that we broke, everything was black and white warehouse videos with black leather. And what we wanted to do was a counterstatement. And that's exactly what we did. And the music was not blues-oriented like everything else. It wasn't Guns N' Roses. It was the antidote. It was the opposite of. And it was Southern California folk pop, heavy pop music. And unlike a lot of those bands who had to go to a full-on ballad to get on pop radio, Gunnar and I were the rock band that dominated pop radio for a while. We were kind of men without a country. We were too heavy for pop radio. So like the Kiss FMs and the Z100s were the last to go on our single because it was too heavy for them. It wasn't Paul Abdul. And the rock radio abandoned us the minute we broke on pop radio. So that's basically what it was. We found ourselves, interestingly enough, men without a country in our own country.
Yeah.
And I thought that was pretty fascinating, actually. When you look at it, it was different. And, all we wanted to do really was be a heavy metal version of the Hollies or, Heart 20 years later. I mean, that's kind of what we were trying to do. And it worked. But it pissed a lot of people off. And when I look back on it now, I'm actually pretty satisfied with that. I'm okay with being misunderstood. It's my karma.
Yeah, and listen, it worked out. Now, I know we were only given 20 minutes, and we've gone over that, but I find the Kiss connections in your world intriguing. You worked with Russ Ballard.
Yeah.
You were managed by Larry Mazer, who managed the Kiss Revenge era. And
right.
You had Bobby Rock, who was part of the Vinnie Vincent Invasion, as your drummer.
And we wrote with Vinnie Vincent.
And you wrote with Vinnie Vincent. Yeah. Were you big Kiss fans, or is this sort of all happenstance?
Yes and no. I'm going to say that I was a big Kiss fan when I was a kid, as everybody was that grew up in the 70s. I mean, of course, I dressed up as Paul Stanley for Halloween. Who didn't?
Yeah, exactly.
And, years later, I had people dressing up as Matt and Gunnar. So I think there's karma there. I'm
right.
sorry, I'm going to go to that place,
You're right.
Image, as I said, image clearly important. It just is.
Yep.
And, in the same way, you look at the karma. I mean, how long did it effing take to get Kiss into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? I mean,
almost 40 years.
Seriously.
Well, 25 years or 30
what I'm
years
saying
afterwards?
it just became a really bad joke, didn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, it just became a bad joke. I mean, these guys, say whatever you want to say, dominated the planet in the 70s, and had a long running career. Clearly, Gene is a genius of marketing and self-promotion. Say whatever you want to say. There's a lot to pay attention to. There's a lot to enjoy. And I can genuinely say that I'm friends with Gene and with Paul. When I see them, we have a really nice time. And I think it's probably because, clearly at different scales, but I kind of know, I know a few things about what they've experienced in their career, and I admire them for still doing it. And so, yeah, I mean, we didn't want to be Kiss. I mean, you got guys like Bret Michaels, like, we just want to be Kiss.
Right.
Clearly, Gunnar and I didn't.
Right.
We didn't do that similar thing. But, I have to say that, I remember talking to Gene backstage when they had the makeup off and stuff, and I was one of the millions of people who said, "Gene, put the makeup back on, charge $200 a ticket." And of course, this is 1990. What did I know?
Right.
It's like, yeah, they've done that. And, I love the fact they've had, we say this is going to be the last Nelson album, but then again, how many farewell tours have they had? So I mean,
quite a few.
You just never know.
But
exactly.
But going back to the Larry Mazer days, and Kiss did the Revenge tour, and you were talking before about your record company didn't want to give you tour support, they didn't want to help you out. Did Larry and the guys never come and say to you, "Hey, come and open the tour, come and be part"? I mean, and if not, why not? Okay, you would think
no, they never did.
management
Larry
stables.
also managed Cinderella, though. He also managed Cinderella at the time.
Right.
And we did actually go out with Cinderella.
Okay.
And
so
that was something that he ponied up, And at the time, we did go to see, I remember, here's a Kiss moment. Gunnar and I went to go see Kiss playing, I believe it was the Long Beach Arena in Los Angeles.
Right.
And our first album had just come out, and Gunnar and I had guest hosted on MTV, and it was kind of that era that, we were kind of exploding. And I remember Winger had opened that show, and they were changing, the set changed, basically. Winger was done, they were, getting ready and all that stuff. And I remember we were there to see Larry Mazer, and we were at the soundboard with John Kolodner, and we heard this kind of rumbling. It was like, what's going on? And we looked around, and John Kolodner said, get security. And said, what's going on? He said, it's you guys. And the lights were on, and people were starting to come down to the soundboard to get a hold of us or to meet us or whatever, and the whole entire arena. And it was John Kolodner, I've never seen him more terrified in my life. They rushed us out through the crowd, and Gunnar was like, we're eating it up. It was fantastic. But we went backstage, and Kolodner said, it's begun, and it's never going to change. This is going to be a big deal for you guys. It's going to hit really big. And it was before our album really broke. And
right.
It also, so at the time, I was a little bit nervous, I'll be honest with you, because I realized, of course, the jaded artist in me at, ripe old age of 21, that the only difference was we were on television. That was the only difference. Musically speaking, I was the same guy. I was the same guy that woke up that morning and put my pants on one leg at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And television really can change things. And it can end it.
It really can.
So I think, so I guess that's why, looking back on it, well, that's probably where the seed for Imaginator came from.
I do want to ask you about Ricky Nelson, Remembered, and Scrap Metal. Mm-hmm. But since you just mentioned Vinnie Vincent writing with him, was that an experience, quote unquote, an experience, if you know what I mean? Or was that just like any old other writing session?
He was actually, at the time, we're going way back.
Right.
He was really nice to me. He was nice to Gunnar and myself. He was very nice to us. And, Kolodner kind of hooked us up together. And he was actually a talented writer. He had a stamp. Definitely you knew it was Vinnie when he wrote something, because it was all about harmony guitars and the Vinnie sound or whatever. And it didn't make the album.
Okay.
And, it didn't make the album, but we had a good writing session with him. I remember that. And recently Gunnar and I played in Connecticut at the Mohegan Sun Casino, and his twin daughters came to the show. Really? And I hadn't seen them since they were really little. They were maybe 4, right. I think 4 or 5. And they were lovely girls, but, they haven't talked to their dad in a long time. And, you hear things, and Gunnar and I are really tight with Mark Slaughter, who hears things and whatever. And all you can do is just, send your best wishes and move along, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, it is too bad, because I personally did not like him as a guitarist in Kiss, but in terms of a writer, he wrote some of the greatest mm-hmm. stuff throughout the 80s, and even on the Revenge album. He wrote some great stuff, so got to give him credit there. Scrap Metal, since you mentioned Mark Slaughter, still doing a few shows. What's the plan with that project?
Well, we just did. We just got back about a week and a half ago and did a couple of shows. The lineup was Stephen Pearcy, Eric Martin, and Lita Ford, and of course the Brothers Nelson. So we got a chance to do 4-song blocks from all those projects, and it was a lot of fun. I actually, as much as I say, hopefully I'm too busy to do this, it's like going to summer camp with my friends. You know what I mean? I actually really enjoy it, and I know we have some shows that they're trying to book it, and I'm actively telling my agent, you should book more of this. And funny enough, I found that there are a lot of people that book those types of bands that don't want scrap metal to be successful, mm-hmm. because, agents and managers, it cuts into their profit. A lot of, from a fan's point of view, I'd rather go see a show where I could see the 4 best songs sung by the lead singers of those bands, per act, go and see basically a review, than I would, go see, something, if you've got $65 to see a show, that's what I'd do. But I can kind of understand why it's gotten some resistance from the industry, because, they don't want it all to go away from them. But we're working hard to get those shows booked a little bit more, and I really wish that there were more of those booked this summer, because I think it's a natural summer show.
Yeah, it's a fun project, and hopefully, or maybe at some point, there'll be some kind of album or collaboration that you guys could all do together. Ricky Nelson remembered. Very important to remember Ricky, your father.
Sure.
Tell me about that. Is that something that is still... You see, I'm up in Montreal, so we don't see a lot of these things coming up our way. So is that something that's still going on? Have you done shows recently?
Yeah, we just played in New York. You know, my brother and I do that show as a duo and with a band from time to time. And it really kind of came down to something we wanted to always do alongside what we were doing. It's a high integrity gig that for us is kind of a selfish thing, because I was really tight with my dad. You know, I lost him when I was 18, and I miss him less when I go through this stuff. But these are the songs that we grew up with, and we got this great video presentation we do with it. We had a lot of fun, and it's been really successful. But Gunnar and I really had to make a decision to kind of pick up the torch and run with it, because we found that his music was going away, and there were a lot of people requesting it, and it just didn't feel right to kind of put it in the middle of one of our sets.
Right.
It didn't do it justice. So we just did a show that was all that, and it's kind of developed and gone into something that's pretty great, you know. And I actually really enjoy it, and I think that it brings Gunnar and myself to center. So even if we're having, you know, those brother moments where we're, you know, hey, we're not getting along right now or whatever, when we do one of these shows, it's kind of like it's bigger than we are. So it's kind of like it kicks our ass a little bit and kind of reminds us where we come from and what we're about, and focuses us. And more importantly, you know, it keeps that music around. And we have a lot of people we just want to transform in front of us, because they had so many memories with the stuff, and as did we. So I enjoy it. And yeah, as I said, hopefully we'll be playing more of our stuff coming up, you know, with this new sound thing and the occasional Nelson gig. And I mean, we're busy guys, but I think that's kind of what you have to do nowadays. It's as an artist, as a musician, what's really cool, it's like you were talking about Mark Slaughter, you know, of course, Vinnie Vincent, you know, he's Mark lives down the street. He's one of our really good friends. And when we started doing the Ricky Remembered show, he said, you know, you guys are so fortunate to have that, to have the ability to not be stuck just doing one thing. You know, you guys can actually do multiple things and musically be diverse and have it not look schizophrenic and weird. And he said that's such a gift, and I really agree with him. I think that it really is a gift to be able to do that and to tap into something different, because then you can, you know, as a musician, you can come back and do something different and feel fulfilled. You know, you don't feel like your group doesn't become a rut. And it's like we've got a show that's coming up at the Hard Rock. They do a summer concert series, and we're going to do something in Vegas at the big casino there. And it's going to be a big deal, and it's a Nelson show. And frankly, Bobby Rock can't do the show for some reason, and we're going to put together an entire new lineup for a run of shows. And I've got a month to do it, and it's going to be hard because we have pretty high standards. You know, we don't want to just be okay. We want to bring a show. So I got a lot of work to do, and I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying being busy.
Yeah, and it really is a nice thing to have, because you also hit different crowds. You know, it's a different presentation. It's not always plugged in with the amps turned on. I'm sure the Ricky Nelson crowd is a little older, and then you've got your Nelson.
Yeah,
it really is a gift.
It's true. Yeah, it's really fun, and we just played up in Canada, not in Montreal though. We played up near the Niagara area at a big casino there. We've done it twice, and like the Ricky Remembered thing, you know, I think it's a 1,700 seater, and we sold out 6 shows in a row each time we played it. Wow. And so there are people that want to see it, and that's kind of fun because, as you said, completely different crowd. But of course, we always have the first few rows that are all Nelson fans. You know, you could see the difference in the age group. It's pretty fun, you know, and you know, I enjoy it, and you should come see that sometime. It's fun, and truthfully, it's made Gunnar a really good guitar player. Yeah. And I think that the album that we're out supporting now, if you hear the guitar parts on it, you know, 90% of that is him. And I think a lot of that came from, you know, basically going through and studying and learning from guys like James Burton, who played with our dad. You know, you can't fake that stuff. You have to be good to pull that off.
Oh, agreed. It's got to be interesting. And it must be a real learning experience because you hear those songs on the radio, but to have to, like you say, deconstruct them and actually make the parts for yourself, that's got to be a challenge.
Yeah, it is. It's a challenge, but it's also really fun because, as I said, we grew up listening to that stuff and watching them play it. Mm-hmm. So we kind of, we have a different perspective that it goes even beyond the records. And boy, my pop was really a good entertainer, and he was a great guy, and he deserves the respect that he never got. And it's fun now that he's kind of starting to get it. And Gunnar and I always say it's nice to feel that maybe in a little part, in a little way, they're talking about giving a Lifetime Achievement Grammy this year, and Gunnar and I totally have something to do with that, and making sure people don't forget.
Yeah, you're doing a great job, and the new album Peace Out is fantastic. I know we're way over time, but Matthew, absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much. I do appreciate the time, and I hope I didn't get too candid. I never really get a chance to talk, as we were talking about. It's usually what people see, and I'm glad that I get a chance to gab a little bit. And I appreciate the time. Yeah,
absolutely. And we're going to use the audio and stuff, so everybody will get to hear your thoughts as they were. So that's going to be great too.
Thank you very much. All right, I really appreciate the time, and sorry I went over.
No, it's fine. No, it's for you. I know that sometimes you have other interviews after that, and we hog into other people's time, and that's not cool. But thank you. Great pleasure. And the album was a great discovery. I got it sent to me, and I put it in. And I was just blown away. It was really rock song after rock song after rock song. I didn't know if it was going to be a collection of ballads or what. It was just really great. And that is absolutely as sincere as I could ever be. It was fantastic.
Oh, thank you. And thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Really, seriously.
Thank you. Thank you, Matthew. Bye-bye now.
Take care.
There you have it, my interview with Matthew Nelson of Nelson. The new album is Peace Out. Great piece of work. In fact, surprising, it's basically 12 rock songs. There's not a lot of slow stuff going on there, which is great to hear for me as a rock fan. Bill, we should, of course, tell folks to head over to Leverty.com. You've been releasing singles. The last one was Strong. Where are we on the follow-up to Strong?
Hey, Still digging, trying to find those little specks of gold so I can put something together and fashion together another tune. But it's a fun process. I enjoy and a lot of it just turns into practice. Yeah. But I got some ideas I'm putting together, and but I was going to say about the Nelson interview. I think it's kind of it would be great to be a fly on the wall when those two guys are sitting down trying to decide who's going to sing one of their songs, because they're both such great singers. Yeah. They both have, kind of the same genetics, so to speak. And, how do you go, I really think my voice would be better on this one than your voice, when they both sound, the vocal blend is so good. But I'd love to know how that process goes, because they both sing so well and they both sound alike. So that's got to be some kind of interesting
maybe they
discussion, or maybe they just go, "Hey, man, let's flip a coin, and you're going to get this one, and I'll get the next one." But
maybe they arm wrestle, or they hop into the boxing ring and go a couple of rounds and see who gets it.
Yeah, it could be. That's another way to solve that one.
Or it's like, I wrote it, I sing it. But no, it's a great band, great talents, and. Matthew mentioned that they want to walk away from doing these rock albums and they want to go do something a little different. Do you, as a musician, ever think, I'm going to walk away from doing rock or walk away from doing the country? Do you think that way and say, okay, I've done it so long, I'm going to totally walk away?
I haven't yet, but I have felt that when I pull out my acoustic guitar and something comes out, it doesn't always sound rock, and I have the acoustic guitar in my living room area, where I sit a lot and watch TV, and so a lot of ideas come out of that guitar, and they don't seem like they would really work as well on an electric guitar. So I think there's a certain percentage of me that loves to play rock music. There's a certain percentage of me that loves to play other stuff. So keeping a balance is good, and I love it all, and I'm not ready to walk away from any specific genre, But I definitely have artistically the different genres that I love to play and enjoy writing.
Is there any genre that you haven't done that you want to explore? Have you thought of classical music or bluegrass or opera? I mean, is there one that you say, okay, boy, I'd love to just sit down and do a couple of bluegrass tunes. Anything like that?
Well, I did. I put out an album called Deep South that has
that's
a
right.
bunch of bluegrass songs on there, and I love bluegrass. And like I said, when I pull out my acoustic guitar, a lot of times that influence hits me. But one of the things I'd kind of like to explore, and I don't really, sit down and go, all right, I really want to sit down and write this kind of song. I just kind of play, and whatever comes out that captures my interest, I chase that. But one of these days, I want to try to write some really cool, mellow rock stuff, kind of a Pink Floyd kind of style, but maybe a little bit somehow different, but a little bit, more orchestrated than what I'm normally used to doing with more layers of kind of different, sounds and stuff. But I'm not a classical musician. I can't begin to think I ever will be. That stuff's a little too advanced for me.
Right.
I'm not a jazz musician. That stuff's way too advanced for me. So I think rock, pop, country, bluegrass, and then any kind of other thing that I might be able to cobble together would be where I'll find myself one day.
So no rap record from you?
I don't think so. I don't think I can really pull that off.
Without offending, a middle-aged Virginia white rap. I'm not sure that would go over well, right?
Well, they might have said that, about the guy from Michigan named Eminem, who made a career out of it. It's just that he could do it. I just can tell you right now, I can't.
Yeah, I can't.
I'm
either.
not.
Yeah, but it's got to be easier though with technology now to actually do like what you were mentioning, some stuff with orchestration and stuff, because you don't actually have to go out and you can sort of get the loops and the samples and just sort of layer stuff, and we'll see someday.
Yeah.
There you go.
That would be one direction I'd like to give a shot at someday.
Oh, I'd love to hear that. I'd love to hear that. But let's just remind the folks that this episode is brought to you by the Heavy Montreal Festival, August 7th, 8th, and 9th. And of course, it is in Montreal. Korn, Slipknot, Faith No More, and many, many more. Bill, always a pleasure.
Hey, thanks again for having me, Mitch. This is a great time.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, remind the folks, head over to Leverty.com. Check me out on @Mitch Lafon on Twitter and Bill at @Leverty on Twitter. There you go. Thank you.
Thanks again for having me, brother. See ya.
There you go.